All right, here we go. We are recording. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Dave Amano, your host, and we are here to help entrepreneurs move forward. That is what Avanti means in Italian, move forward. I have a great Italian guest today, Mike Weinberg. You shorten that from Weinbergero. I know that.
Hey, we're going to Italy for the first time in October. My wife and I are celebrating our 25th anniversary, so I need some coaching from you.
Oh, fantastic.
Podcast. We got almost 2 weeks, so I'm looking forward to that.
When are you going? When are you going?
We're going in October. So
oh, my God.
Gorgeous, cool, perfect. We're going to go all the way from Venice through Tuscany, Florence, Rome. We got a whole plan, but I'd love some input.
I have been all over, and I know like the foods to try and things to see. One of the coolest things about Italy is, as you probably know, it used to be all like separate little kingdoms, and each one had their own, very, very passionate culture with, food and customs, and they're still there after all these years.
Yeah, I didn't, until we started researching tours and watching videos, I did not know about how ununified the country was, and everything kept talking about the unification. So I can't wait to see the experience. And listen, I can't keep this figure without feeding a good amount of carbohydrates. So I will take the coaching that you're going to give me.
You are going to the right place. You're going to the right place.
That's great.
And then next time I'm gonna convince you to go to Sicily, because that's a whole nother trip just in and of itself. So
yeah, that's great.
And Sicilians still have problems saying that they're Italian, where we say that we're Sicilian, and I guess we're Italian too. So
my assistant is Sicilian, and she has made it very clear that she is Sicilian before she's Italian. So I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and she will be loyal to you forever. Let me tell you. So excellent, Mike. Well, Mike Weinberg, I'm going to read your bio. Met you a few months ago at this great conference that my friend behind the wall, the other office behind me, Tony King, told me about this great sales conference about outbound marketing. Everyone's talking about inbounds, funnels, et cetera, click funnels. You guys are getting back, combining the new cutting edge world with just good old fashioned outbound sales. And he said, let's go to this conference. It's a 2-3 day conference in Atlanta. I'm like, sounds great. So we went and had a great time. I've had a lot of the speakers on my show, because I'm a sales guy at heart, really jumped into it. Don't tell the others, you were certainly my favorite. Had a great time. I know, we'll keep that between us. And you were the only guy that when we went to take the picture, you gave me a little kiss on my cheek. So I will remember that forever.
That's the Italian in me coming out. And the New York. It was, honestly, David, it was the conversation we had in the hallway. And you were just so engaging. I'm like, this is a real guy. So it was just fun to talk about life and different things with you. And so I look forward to this for a long time. When I checked the calendar last week and saw we had this thing, because we scheduled this months ago, I was like, yes, this is going to be good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, we're joking that you're Italian. With a name like Weinberg, I'm sensing you're Jewish, and I say Italian. A lot of my good friends are Jewish, and I joke that I think back in the day my ancestors were actually Jewish, and they just went west for better wine. They're like.
That's great. My story is a little more complex. Heritage is Jewish. Faith is in Christ. That's a whole other conversation. But I can play down both sides of that.
Both sides.
Kind of like in the book, I took the middle ground on the political chapter there with the election. So
there you go.
We'll circle back to that at some point. But
so you could enjoy the Manischewitz and the Chianti.
Oh, perfect. That's perfect.
So, Mike, for the Avanti family that wants to get to know you, we're gonna dig in. But I want to read your bio here so they get to know you a little bit more. Mike Weinberg loves sales. What a great first sentence. Thank you. He is a consultant, coach, speaker, and best-selling author with specialties in new business development and sales management. He's on a mission to simplify sales and create high-performance salespeople and sales teams. Mike is known for his blunt, practical approach that he calls it like he sees it. That's the New Yorker in you coming out, right? He has spoken and consulted on 5 continents and works with companies in all industries, ranging in revenue size from a few $1 million to many billions of dollars. Mike was the #1 producer in 3 different companies before launching his consulting practice, and he has been named a top sales influencer by Forbes, OpenView Labs, and other publications. His first book, New Sales Simplified, the essential handbook for prospecting and new business development, became an Amazon #1 bestseller and has been a bestseller for 6 years. His second book, Sales Management Simplified, is being called arguably the best book that has ever been written on sales management. Get me all choked up, Mike. And an unequaled blueprint for leading salespeople and building high-performance sales teams. Transplanted New Yorker, Mike has called St. Louis home for 27 years. And Mike, we also got to talk about the new thing in your life, right? If you're watching this, everybody, here's Mike's new book, Sales Truth. I have a copy. There you go. Mike's shirt as well. And Mike gave me a shirt at the conference, and I was joking that if I was smart enough, I would have worn it today for the interview. So thank you for that shirt. Though. It fits very nice, and I wear it around the house and taking walks in the neighborhood quite often.
I appreciate everything you're doing to promote the book and the brand. So
absolutely. So Mike, we want to get into some really great sales education from you, how we can be cutting edge, combining the old world of just outbound code calling, et cetera, with new cutting edge. But first and foremost, would love to hear a little bit more about your story. So how did it all begin where Mike all of a sudden said, wow, this sales thing, there might be something here?
It's so funny to start there because I never, like I'm not exaggerating, never wanted to be in sales. I grew up in the home of a sales manager and a sales executive. My dad was a big time New York City sales leader for huge companies like Revlon, and all through college and even in my first couple of years of my career, I made it very plain that I'm not going into sales. I'm a business guy. I'm too smart for that. That's not for me. And so they take great pleasure now in teasing me about my immaturity and
they look at your shirt, your books.
Yeah,
Mike, I think sales is going on someplace.
Yeah, this wasn't the master plan. So I ended up in a really cool job in New York City, working for the guy that owned Thompson Medical Company, and it was also the owner of Slim Fast Foods when Slim Fast was growing like crazy, way back in the early 90s. And as this guy's assistant, I got all kinds of crazy assignments. I got to buy our Gulfstream business jet and run the flight department. I had no business doing this as a 24 and 25-year-old, but my real life MBA came because I got to travel with the CEO of this company who was like also the chief salesperson. And we'd fly into a city, go to Minneapolis, make a sales call on the executives at Target, get in the plane the next day, go to Arkansas, see the people at Walmart. And watching the CEO sell was very, very eye-opening to me. I never really understood what sales was until I watched him. And I realized it wasn't about product. It wasn't about pitching. It wasn't about being pushy. It was about friendship and value and painting a picture of a better future and becoming a trusted advisor and asking great questions. I thought, this is very interesting. This is really consulting. It's just called sales, right? Because they have a need. You have a solution. If you can help them. And then my dad, when I decided to go into sales, his opening coaching to me was very simple. He says, your motivation is to make your customer as successful as possible. And if you always try to help your customer win, you'll always win in sales. And that today, that was 25 years ago. That's still what drives me as a salesperson. So I ended up getting into sales and I liked it. And I learned pretty quickly the type of selling I liked was different than what my dad's people did at a product company and what I did at Slim Fast selling to a retailer. I like the business to business hunting type sale, like your sponsor, Paychecks, right? It's interesting that I get to work with their sales leaders. They're trying to pick up new clients. I love the business to business hunt. And I realized as my career progressed that there's a lot of people in sales that are good at many parts of the job. They're good at retention, they're good at service, they're good at product, but they struggle when it comes to net new business acquisition. They're not good at bringing in new clients. They love to serve, but they're not so good with the conflict and the risk and the hunting piece of the job. So that's where I really started to excel and realize, I was a hunter. So it was natural for me when I had my first go round in coaching and consulting to try to help people bring in more new business. And what I learned really quickly was that in most companies, there's a great desire to pick up more net new business, real hunting, real new accounts, real growth. So I had to perfect my model to teach other people how to do what I did. And fast forward, ended up back in consulting, 7, 8 years ago on my own. and I was blogging and using some of the new techniques you were describing, building a platform on social channels, and I made friends with many of the people you've had on this program, and a friend at Anthony Iannarino and Jill Conrath, and I started getting noticed. And the summer of 2011, I got contacted by a couple publishers that said, "Hey, you can write. We're reading your blog, and you've got a really interesting take, and you're kind of contrarian, and you simplify things really well, and you're a consultant. Why don't you do a book proposal?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." People ask, "Well, how'd you get the book?" I'm like, it wasn't my plan. I did the proposal. One publisher laughed at me because my following wasn't what they wanted. And the American Management Association, AMACOM, said, "We love you. Your following's big enough. I will help you walk through the process." And I got a little $5,000 advance to do my first book. And I wrote New Sales Simplified. And I had no idea. And I will tell you, David, when I sent that book out to real experts like Anthony Iannarino and Jill and Art Subcheck, people I'd looked up to for a long time, I cringed. I thought, they're going to laugh. This is kindergarten coaching. It's the most basic sales material ever. And all the endorsements started coming back with these rave reviews and saying, this is the book the sales world needs. So we launched the book, and 7 years later, it's still a bestseller. Yesterday, the Kindle version was #1 in the sales and selling category on Amazon.
Wow.
That's unheard of for a 7-year-old book. And all I can attribute it to is that the world is really hungry for simple truth and practical answers of what it takes to win more new sales. So I'm really thankful for the platform that first book gave me, which just opened up the world to a lot more coaching, consulting, speaking opportunities. And the more you do it, the more you see, and then you get more theories and you get to write more. And that's kind of where it put me on the path to where we are today.
That is so awesome. I know that a lot of, Amazon bestsellers are, it happened for an hour, at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and okay, they're an Amazon bestseller, and they put that feather in their cap. But to have it happen 7 years later organically because the content is so good, that is amazing. And I'm about halfway through it. It is a super, super fantastic book because it's not theory. I like how you just tell it like it is, what needs to be done. Now you've been selling for, you said, about 25 years. Mm-hmm. What are you doing differently today than you were doing 25 years ago?
That's a good question. Less than you think, mm-hmm. which is part of the reason I wrote Sales Truth. I'll jump in here and answer that, and then I'll talk about what I'm doing differently. I wrote the newest book, Sales Truth, because I was very frustrated and frankly confused. Because what I read online, particularly on LinkedIn from sales experts today, that everything in sales has changed, and this is what you need to do to be a modern seller and to succeed in this new world. But their preaching online look very different than what I see with my own eyes in companies in really diverse industries around the globe. And I have clients in a very eclectic mix of businesses, from big data to big defense to big trucks, software, SaaS, specialty metals, payroll services, plastics. Like, it's quite an assortment. And what I see with my own eyes about who's winning big and how they're bringing the new business, most of those people are deploying the very same best practices they did a few years ago, 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. So not as much has changed as people say. Having said that, what I'm doing differently and what I'm coaching my salespeople that I work with to do differently, and their leaders, is that we have to get to value fast. Because of the internet, which we love, which gives us information, allows us to do research. We have the benefit of social channels to figure things out and connect, and all that stuff we could talk about on the inbound side, plus the research is great. But it's also put salespeople in a little bit of a trap, because buyers don't need us like they used to. In the old days, for information and education, a prospect would take a meeting with a salesperson because they wanted to hear what was going on in the industry, and everybody had plenty of time on their hands. Today, it's the opposite. They don't need you for info. You got, Al Gore invented the internet. We all have everything we need at our fingertips in terms of info, and nobody is sitting around with nothing to do. Most companies are rather lean. People are doing 2 jobs, not 1 job. So a salesperson is an interruption, and no one's looking for the free lunch like they may have been years and years ago. So what's changed is we have to be sharper at requesting a meeting, quicker to articulate value and compelling reasons that someone would want to give up their time to visit with you. And we do that by really working on our messaging and not wasting a lot of time in rapport building and in nonsense, but we get right to the heart of the value we bring to our clients and share the ways we help other people to get buyers to put their guard down and go, you help other people that have those issues, you create those kind of results, we should spend some time together. I think that's one of the biggest areas that I see things changing.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, it does seem like we're doing twice the amount of work, less time for the fluff, I guess, right? There's certainly in the 80s, 90s, whatever, a little more time to visit and have coffee and all that stuff. And yeah, I've noticed that if I don't get somebody really interested in, as you say, the value quickly, it's very easy for them to become a slippery chicken, I call them, right? Like they're nice, they're smiling, but a quick email back. Oh, Dave, I'm swamped until August. Blah blah blah. Get back to me then. And it's very easy for them just to slither away from me, and probably they're hoping that I'll go away. And then they find out that I have this philosophy of, it's called being pleasantly persistent, and I don't go away. And eventually I get them to give me a no or a yes, right? But I think it's just easier because of email, because of technology, to kind of just go and politely try to slide away easier, right? And then forget about having luck of people picking up the phone, right? I mean, I think with caller ID, it gets more and more difficult. Voicemails galore, and I think we still, in my opinion, I think you guys would talk about this too, we still should use the phone, right? I mean, it's another message, but that followed up, have it be a piece of the pie. Phone maybe followed up with an email, maybe followed up with a handwritten letter, maybe a gift if you're passing by. Just kind of guerrilla sales warfare, right? I mean, it's got to be a little bit different these days, right?
Yeah, I don't want the listeners to blow by some of the brilliant sales coaching you just laid down in the last minute or so there. I mean, let's go back to pleasantly persistent for a minute, because it's so simple, but yet it doesn't get executed. I think most salespeople wimp out way before they're becoming a pain in the ass. Like, nobody really wants to be a pest, and I don't want to be perceived as a pest. But the truth is, and any of your guests and people that you heard at the Outbound Conference, whether it's Mark, Anthony, Jeb, myself, we're going to tell you that the fanatical prospectors, to use Jeb's term from his great book, they never stop. And Jeb has stories, I have got stories where in my own career, the best clients took forever to break in. And the way you earn the meeting is by being, you said it, pleasantly persistent and dripping value and being creative, because you earn the meeting with someone by not going away, by showing you're committed to bringing them value. And I will even leave voicemails for someone to the effect of saying, hey, you know what? I'm guessing you're not calling me back because you're liking what I'm sharing with you and enjoying my messages. So not trying to be a pest and fill up your inbox or your mail or your voicemail box.
Yeah.
But I'm calling you because you look so much like clients we're bringing tremendous value. So you can give me a call, or I'm going to try you again. And then I'll call back and a couple days later, and I'm going to leave another version of my story, and I'll drip one or two value nuggets on, and I'll be creative, and eventually I'll kind of be funny, and I'll say, maybe I'm earning a call back on perseverance alone. But what anyone who's done this for any long period of time can tell you is they've got stories that testify to the fact, and this is the way I say it in Sales Truth, you absolutely can be building a relationship with someone who has not called you back or responded to your attempts. You don't know it, but they're taking note, because most salespeople try once or twice. You get into touch 5, 6, 7, and not just being a pain in the ass or doing the reach out, touch base, blah, blah, blah nonsense, but you're articulating value and real reasons they should be interested, and you're passionately trying to persuade them that it's worth a few minutes for them to invest in a quick dialogue with you because you can bring them value. The person who does that really well, and I love the way you phrase it, pleasantly but persistent, that's who gets the callback. And so often when we get that callback, you know how it starts? The person calling you back says, I'm so sorry that it took me this long to get back with you. I really appreciate your persistence. And then who's got the leverage in that conversation, right? So I think most of us are just wimpy, and we fall way short of being the pain that we think we are. If we were a little more persistent and a little more of a pest, more people would respond. And I'll just, one quick anecdote. I've got a client I talk about in the book. Construction Supply, super healthy company, Ram Tool. I love them. They charge a super premium price for what they do. They deliver construction supplies to job sites. Do you know how their salespeople get more business?
How's that?
They drive their white pickup trucks onto a construction job site, and they're dressed just like the contractors. And they walk in and they try to find the superintendent, and they walk into the construction trailer and they bother some of the subs. And the rule is you go to a new job site 10 weeks in a row. And you're not a pain, and you don't overstay your welcome. And if they're in the middle of a crisis, just wave, say, I'll come back. But eventually you start getting some interest. And after they tell you the third time, the fourth time, we're good, we're set. By the time you show up the fifth, the sixth, the seventh time, you know what happens? They start asking you to produce some quotes for them, where they go, hey, we got some trouble. Can you provide this to us? And by the eighth time, you got a customer. And what's interesting is most salespeople give up after one or two. And they have all this data that says no. So, yes, I hate when people say sales is a numbers game, because it's like an insult to us as sellers. It's also a quality game, but it's and. It's not or. It's a numbers game, and it's a quality game.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and thank you for your business brilliance right back. So true. And it reminds me also, so, who spoke on the stage with you at Outbound, Andrea Waltz, right? The no, right? And her whole thing, and I love it, was enjoy getting no's, because it's the more no's you get, the more you are testing the boundaries, and the more yeses you will get eventually, right? I had her in the podcast a couple months ago, and she said, before you go to bed, try to count how many no's you got that day, and the more the better, right? And most people view it as rejection, like no is rejection. It's like, well, you know what? You said it, Mike. Most people are going to say no 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times. But by the time you get to 9 and 10, more and more people are saying yes, 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 right? And so it's not rocket science. You don't have to be brilliant. You just have to be pleasantly persistent. When I got out of college, I was selling radio advertising, which is, so much fun, selling airtime. And, my boss, Steve Chartrand, who owned the station, he goes, Dave, I'm going to tell you something. He goes, it's the law of 21. You set up a little tickler for every client. This is like before we had computers, right? So on the Rolodex there, set up a tickler about how many times that you've reached out to try to get them to have an appointment or buy. And he goes, it's the law of 21. You don't give up until that tickler gets up to 21. And he goes, here it is, David. You will never get to 21. You will never get to 21. He goes, they'll most likely say yes after a while, or they'll just tell you to get the hell out. Right? But that's okay. Then you move on, right?
It's brilliant. It's. I love Andrea. I learned as much from her as any of the guests that came to speak at Outbound. And her thing about what's your no quotient, right? Yep. How willing are you to take the list of no's? And she goes through all the statistics. Many of them are common knowledge, from Colonel Sanders and Kentucky Fried Chicken to all kinds of entrepreneurs that had things, and it was no. And what I tell people, especially when you're prospecting, that first few no's you get, they mean nothing. It's not personal. It doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. It doesn't even mean they're not a good prospect or that now's not the right time. All no means is you asked, and their automatic reflex response was no. No, I'm busy. No, I'm happy. No, I'm not shopping. I don't know who the heck you are. No. And my common response is, you know what? That's great. Let's get together anyway. Visit with me anyway, because you're going to get value and ideas from the time we spend together, even if there's no next step for me. And it's amazing when you have a simple comeback and you're positive and you just expect the no and you're willing to take it and it's not personal. And you go, hey, I get it. I know you're busy. Everybody's busy. I wanted a half hour. Give me 20 minutes. Give me 10 minutes. I'll ask you 3 powerful questions, and I'll share with you how we're solving problem A and achieving result B for people that look a lot like you. Let's get together.
Yeah.
And when you push, you know what I'm saying? You get results.
Well, and you're also, you're also making people smile, right? There's a little bit of humor in there. You're like taking the no, you're throwing it over your shoulder, and you're just going back with a smile. Like, totally get it. Let's have coffee anyway. Right?
Bingo. You got to eat, right? I'll bring lunch. You slammed? Slammed? Awesome. What kind of sandwich you want? I'll come by. Yeah. And I'll stay for 10 minutes and I'll get out of your hair. Because it's just, It's the persistence. And what I tell people, and this is in the chapter on prospecting and sales truth, you got to sell the value of the meeting. You're not pitching your product. You're not pitching, unless you're an inside salesperson trying to sell over the phone, and that's a different conversation. You're selling the value of the meeting to the prospect, and you got to keep coming back to what's in it for them. Why should they give up this valuable time to visit with you? What are they going to get out of that time together?
Yep. Well, and I think guys like you and me, and I'm guessing everybody can do this to some extent, but we could use humor to our advantage, right? I mean, for me, I have two go-to quote unquote humorous responses when people say no to me. If someone doesn't respond to me, 2 or 3 or 4 times, what I'll do is I'll continue to get that same email that I sent, right? I'll re-forward it and I'll put, hey, take 2 in the subject line, take 3. And by take 3, when I forward it, I'll say, hey, John, you're starting to remind me of the girls in high school. I'm having some flashbacks here. I'm really hoping that you could get back to me, And that usually gets a response, especially from the guys, because they can relate.
It's human. It's people buy from people. Nobody wants to be robocalled. Nobody wants a boring blah 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 message. If you're human and you're self-deprecating or you're funny, if you can be funny, some people can't do funny, so that's not you. Then just be nice. Right. But whatever it is, don't get angry at your prospect. If they're not getting back to you, it's on you. It's not on them. So use humor, use guilt, use creativity. Use persistence, but that's part of sales. And that's why people who really hate conflict, they're really conflict averse, and they're always trying to keep the peace, and they'll acquiesce no matter what because they don't want to make someone else uncomfortable. People wired like that have a really hard time as a sales hunter. Because if you're the hunter, you're trying to displace somebody else. You're trying to interrupt somebody. There's risk. There's rejection. You may even have to push back and have some conflict. And if you hate that, I would just counsel you that it's going to be a challenge to be in a hunting sales role. You might be better off in an account management or more service-oriented role.
Yep. Hunter or a gatherer, right? So we need them both. And it's harder. I'll say it's harder. There's fewer hunters, right? Because it's tough. It's tough to be a hunter, right? I mean, it's not tough, but people make it tough. I just thought of one other quote unquote trick that I use to get people to respond. And you can borrow it. And anybody listening to this podcast, because it works. It's worked 3 times, right? So I sent an email to a prospect. She didn't respond. Again, no response. Again, nothing, 0, not an acknowledgement that I'm alive, right? So then I sent it again, but this time I Googled a picture of crickets, right? And that's all I put in the email, right?
Brilliant.
I just emailed her. It was all these crickets, right? She calls me laughing. She's like, "Oh my God, David. Okay, you got me. That was hilarious. It took me a second to figure out why is David sending me crickets." But same thing what you just said. She goes, "I'm sorry. I've been busy, blah, blah, blah." And then I ended up having a great conversation with her and got the sale. So, don't be afraid of being like a little kooky, a little different to stand out and get people's attention, right?
Totally.
So let's talk about sales truth. Hashtag sales truth, right? So tell us about your new book. How is it different, upgraded, from New Sales Simplified?
Yeah, thank you for asking. The simplest way I could differentiate the 2 books, and they're separated by 7 years in terms of writing. So a lot has changed in the world in terms of what I've been seeing with my clients. Sales Truth is an expose on the sales industry and the myths of today. That's about 20% of the book. And then the back 80% in part 2 is a combination of what does it take to win today? How do you really become a master opportunity creator? So you're not just chasing, you're not sitting, you're not waiting, living in reactive mode or showing up late to opportunities, but what does it look like to be an opportunity creator? The attitude, the mindset, the target account list, the messaging, the focus on prospecting, owning your calendar. And I unpack each of those in its own chapter. And then I pivot to a few more sophisticated concepts and how to stay out of the procurement pit and not get commoditized, which is a huge issue among almost every one of my clients today. There are procurement departments dictating terms. There are customers whose buying process are making everyone have to fit into some box, and it's really hard to differentiate yourself. I have a chapter on how to sell at higher prices and older products, because everyone likes to whine about that. So, and then maybe my favorite chapter in the book highlights two of the best salespeople I've ever seen. And it's a really fun chapter for me because I take no credit. Neither of these people are my clients. They're both friends. One of them is the top car salesperson in North America for Volvo. The guy sold 490 cars last year. And wow. I know nothing, almost nothing about B2C sales. But this guy's become a friend. He sold me 3 cars. Only guy on the planet to sell me more than 1 car.
What's his name?
His name is Tom Calkins at the Volvo dealer here in West County, St. Louis.
There you go.
490 cars. He's so important to Volvo. The people on the factory floor in Gothenburg, Sweden know him by name.
Wow.
So I profiled him for the book. And I also profiled a friend of mine named Ron, who works for a very large financial company that everyone knows the name. And he sells giant financial plans to the biggest companies in America. And you know all of his clients' names. These 2 guys couldn't be more different in their style, in their approach, in their fashion, in their personality. But they're both #1 in the country, making a fortune. And I profile them because in a strange way, what I'm hoping is that people are really encouraged when I share the best practices of what these people are doing to keep winning and stay on top. I mean on top, #1 in the country. Because what they do is not secretive, and they don't have no shortcuts, and they have no hacks, and they don't talk about sales tools. They're both masters of the fundamentals, and they work their ass off. And they're so competitive, and they prepare and practice like crazy backstage. So when they're front stage in front of a prospect or a client, they're just so on. And they know their business, they know their story, they know their competitors, they know their customers, they make selling personal, they ask incredible questions, they present with power, they focus on selling, not nonsense. Like it's the best I could do to show people, if you want to be a top producer, stop listening to the nonsense and looking for the shortcut. Do what these 2 people do. So that's what Sales Truth is. It's debunking some myths about the nonsense today, and then it's very practical. How do you create opportunities? How do you differentiate, not end up in procurement? And then what are the best people doing? And that's a contrast to New Sales Simplified, which is really more the basic how to sell book. How do you frame your message? How do you pick your target prospects? How do you use the phone? How do you conduct a sales call? How do you power up your presentations? New Sales Simplified is much more how to, and this is more just some blunt facts and observations about what's not working and what is.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about. And, you know, as the world gets more and more quote unquote, you know, with tech and automation, I think guys like us that build on relationships that are backed up by value, right? I mean, ultimately, I believe that's what will win. I mean, there's a lot of people that use, you know, things like Infusionsoft and HubSpot for the, you know, the click funnels and all that stuff. And, you know, I tried it just because I'm supposed to, but it's just not me. And I think it comes across as not me. It's not a very authentic way for me to sell. And
can we talk about that for a minute? Because I love where you're going.
Yeah, please.
And I get accused of being a hypocrite because I have a pretty nice inbound setup because I've got intellectual property, and you know, when you have best-selling books, you get leads.
Yep.
And I put out intellectual property, and I have, you know, I don't call them click funnels, but there's a reality that I have a inbound marketing effort. And yet people say, wait a second, Mike, you sell outbound training. And I said, let's make sure we understand the difference. What you're describing, David, is inbound, and it's marketing. It's how do we draw people to ourselves? It's a very important function. Mm-hmm. Where I get concerned is when people who say they're sales experts write articles that tell salespeople that Gary Vaynerchuk or Kylie Jenner, and I'll unpack those examples in a second, are your role models for what today's salesperson should look like. And you, like Gary V and like Kylie Jenner, should be putting out all kinds of stuff and content on social channels so people come running to you. And where I think that falls down is, number one of those things is marketing. What we're doing in selling is trying to create opportunities out of the dirt. It's great if you have leads. It's great if you have a tribe. I love that. But in 100% of the real companies I serve, from defense to plastics to all these other things, right? I don't know of a salesperson whose pipeline is so full because the company or their own social efforts or inbound efforts create so many opportunities in the pipe that they have enough to work to make their number. 100% of the sales teams and salespeople I know are opportunity hungry. Anthony Iannarino says they're opportunity starved, right? Because they don't work the top of the funnel. So I'm a fan of social. I'm a fan of inbound as a supplement to your traditional sales and prospecting efforts. And if you are blessed because of your brand and your company and a marketing engine that feeds you enough warm leads, and then through asking for referrals and other warmer methodology, you can have plenty to work to make your number. I'm awesome with that, but I almost never see that.
Yeah.
So that's right. I want to draw the line because just yesterday on LinkedIn, an overseas sales expert that I have some major issues with because I don't think he's honest. He told people, and he quoted Gary Vaynerchuk, and he showed a video of Gary, who is a legend, right, a marketing guru, dropping F-bombs in this video going, you effing people, you got to put out 100 pieces of content a day. This is what we need to do to build our business. And this sales expert was telling salespeople, see, the phone doesn't work. You got to look at Gary Vee. He's huge. And, and I'm watching this video of this guy with dropping F-bombs wearing his ski cap in the middle of July thinking, my defense contractor, my John Deere dealership, my industrial sandpaper salespeople, my consultant, my bank client, none of those people could get away with putting out videos, let alone Gary style of videos. And there's another social selling training company that I quote this in chapter 2 in the book. They wrote an article that basically said, Kylie Jenner is your role model. Her rise in net worth to $1 billion, right, is because of her social media prowess. Can't you see that social selling leads to real sales? She didn't cold call her way to $1 billion in net worth. And I'm looking at that example going, wait a second. She's a B-list celebrity from a famous dysfunctional family in California who has 1 trillion followers. And I mean, I don't even really know who she is. I had to look this up, right? Because I'm like, what are you saying? And when you look up what she does, and you saw me joke about this at the Apple conference, her model is she takes half-naked selfies and posts them on Instagram. And here we have a social selling expert saying, this is the proof that social selling works. Follow Kylie Jenner's lead. Or yesterday, the guy overseas going, follow Gary Vaynerchuk's lead. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Show me the business-to-business salesperson who's crushing it, taking selfies and playing on LinkedIn all day. Like, I don't see it. I think it's disingenuous. So
you're not doing that, Mike? You're not doing the half-naked selfies at good business?
I don't think it will be good for my business, whether that's because of my body or the taste of people in general and what they want to look at. It doesn't. It's funny, but here's where it bothers me. And this is why I chose to. I didn't name names, but I felt like someone had to say this. The people that fall for this nonsense are typically the more gullible or the struggling salespeople who need the help. And they either have FOMO, like they're so scared they're going to miss out on the new tool, they want to try everything, or they're just freaking lazy. Yeah. They want to push the easy button, like Jeb says, or Mark Hunter. Mark Hunter always says, you can't take likes to the bank. No, you can't. And people like those people, when we accuse them of preaching nonsense, like, oh, stop. They're like, look at all the people who like my posts. Well, people like your posts because nobody wants to pick up the darn phone and make prospecting calls because that sucks. But the truth is it works. And for most of the people listening to this, if you had to choose a methodology, if your mortgage payment depended on you getting meetings with real prospects, and you can choose Kylie Jenner as an example, or you could choose the telephone, most of you that have to eat are going to pick the phone because that's going to get you meetings. And if you're in one of those places where social and your branding and your presence and a perfect LinkedIn profile is going to get you all these opportunities, God bless you. I wish you huge success, and you're blessed. But most people in sales roles, that doesn't work for them.
No, that's very, very well said. And I think a lot of people do make the mistake of trying to follow these I'll call these unicorns, right? Succeeding and I always wondered about Gary Vee because most of his clients are, the social media companies that use VaynerMedia are very big companies. They're, Fortune 1000 companies, right? I finally think I figured out that the reason he's doing all that edgy marketing is to attract the younger generation to work there. I think those are the people watching his videos. I don't know if he's selling Fortune 1000 companies, by swearing and wearing a ski hat, you know?
Yeah, and I'm not picking. I'm like, the guy is brilliant. He's got a huge brand and a huge following, but I don't think that he would claim that he is the role model for the business-to-business sales professional.
Right.
I think, and that's where people stretch.
Yeah.
I think he's a poor use case. My coaching would be, look at the top performing salespeople in your industry and copy what they do.
Yeah.
If they
make
go
it
to
your
trade
own.
shows, go to trade shows. If they make phone calls, go to phone calls. If they pop in, pop in. And if they have figured out a way to put out really cool videos and other content and write white papers and that draws, then do that.
Yeah.
But don't do it because Gary Vee or Kylie Jenner does it. That is a fool's game right there.
Well, and to your point, whatever the leaders in your field are doing, look at that, mentor it, model it, but make it your own, right? I mean, I'm not going to be Mike Weinstein, no matter how hard I try. I'm not going to be Gary Vee. I'm certainly not going to be, what's her name? Kylie Jenner? Kylie Jenner. Half naked pictures of me on the internet's not going to go too far either, right? So, what I do is try to learn as much as I can from people that like I respect. That's why I'm reading your books. And then, Dave Mamano it up, make it my own. It's got to have my own fingerprint on it, right? And just be myself. Right. That's why you and I had a great conversation.
But I wish more salespeople would take your advice. You can't be the people that you books you read. You have to be your own self. You take a couple ideas from everybody and you create your own style, your own thing. You can't use my words unless you have my style. You have to be you. There's a woman is a top salesperson at one of my clients. I won't say her name. I'll call her Deborah. Her style is totally different than mine. And as I watched her, I was tempted to try to coach her and make changes, but I looked at her results and I'm like, you know what? She's number one in her company. She doesn't need my change. And she does stuff even on the phone. She'll get a prospecting meeting going. She'll get on the phone and she'll say, hey, I just want you to know this is a sales call. And I'm like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard said in the beginning of a meeting.
Yeah.
But her voice tone and her personality and her sweet confidence, and there's something so natural and authentic about her. I think the prospect hears and goes, well, this is different. This girl's honest. Okay, let's talk.
Yeah.
So I would never suggest someone else try that. But I watched her and I'm like, that's brilliant. You be you. You don't even need me. You're doing great. So you got to adapt it for your own stuff.
Well, good for you for recognizing that. I gave a keynote a few months ago and someone said, Dave, you're going to be the next Tony Robbins. And I said, thank you. I know it's coming from a good place, but I want to be the next Dave Mamano.
You know what's funny? At Outbound, I was being interviewed after by one of the media companies that were there. Yeah. And I spoke the second day right after Victor Antonio. It was lunch between us, but he is maybe the best speaker I've ever seen.
Wonderful.
Funny, comedian, polished, brilliant stage presence, using an easel. And I'm like, I am 3% of the speaker that he is. And someone asked me, they said, well, how was it following him? And I said, frankly, it was awesome because I'm not trying to be him. I can't be him. I'm me. Yeah. I get away with it because I'm me. I'm likable. I could be funny and I got content that people like. But I'm not going to try to compete with Victor Antonio. He may be the best speaker I've ever seen. Yeah. But because I didn't have a complex about it because I wasn't comparing myself to him.
Yeah.
He's great. I can't do what he does. I do what I do. I do it well. Yeah. And it was interesting even having to articulate. I was like, oh, that was healthy. Because I had no nerves about it because I wasn't competing with Victor Antonio. I love what he did, but I can't do that. I got to do my thing. So that just is even further just to drive home the point that you're making. You got to be yourself. You
be you, Mike. You're very lovable. Very lovable.
So, hey, can I give you one more Italian kiss?
I love it. I was hoping. What I'll do is when I post this on social media that your podcast is live, I'm going to post that picture of us too. Okay.
I would love it.
So last question.
Okay.
So if you could be hanging out with somebody famous from history, who would that be?
That is really hard for me. I will tell you who it might be today, and it's going to be a bizarre answer. One of my favorite sports personalities is Greeny from ESPN, Mike Greenberg. Mm-hmm. And I love sports, and I watch a lot of sports talk. Like my favorite show is PTI, Pardon the Interruption. And I think it was a big mistake for Mike to break up. I think Mike made a bad decision there. But I think there's a lot of human interest stories in sports, and there's a lot of sales analogies and leadership analogies. And from the moment I heard Mike Greenberg on the radio 15 years ago, I thought this guy would be my friend. We're the same exact age. We're both from New York. We love the same sports teams growing up. And he gets to visit with all these celebrities and athletes that I would just drool to spend time with. So if there was a guy that I'd love to just hang out with and talk life, sales, New York pizza, athletics, business, I just think he's wise, and I would enjoy his company. So, it's not like
would you be talking about the Yankees or the Mets?
I would be talking about the Mets from my growing up. But I've lived in St. Louis 27 years, so I've become a Cardinals fan. You can't live here and you're wearing red. You can't not become a Cardinals fan because it's like a religion here.
Yeah.
And I do love baseball, although right now the game is a mess with the lack of action. And I'll tell you real quick, I had guests in town this weekend from South Africa. They're very excited to visit. They stayed at our house, sales management gurus, unbelievable company. And we made friends last year when I went to stay with them. Brought them to a baseball game. And their comments about the game of baseball were so on target with most of our frustration. The woman looked at me. Her name is Wendy Ann. She said, I don't understand this. Why don't the hitters hit? They come up, they pose, they posture, they strike out, and then they walk back to the dugout like Donald Duck. Where is the hitting? And it was I don't understand what's going on. The lack of fundamentals of the game is unbelievable. Attendance is down while home runs and strikeouts are up. So that's a conversation for a different day. But
yeah,
I like Mike Greenberg a lot. That's who would.
Excellent. Yeah. So you really did give me an answer about the history one though. So I gotta push a little bit. It seems like there's maybe multiple people, but you can pick one.
I got one, and I studied him about a year ago. I'm going to go with Winston Churchill.
Oh, good one.
I had seen a documentary. I asked my wife for a few books for Christmas on his history, and then right as I was starting to read, the movie came out. The Longest Day, but I can't remember the name of the movie. But it was the Churchill story.
Yeah.
When you look at what that guy had to do in the face of incredibly bad odds and a downtrodden country, his ability to stand up against Nazi Germany, against his own parliament, and keep that side of the war together while London was getting bombed, and some of the decisions they made to survive, and his fearlessness getting on the subway and the bus to meet with the public, and just the way he handled it and was the public face of the country. I mean, I get the chills talking about it. Like, I crave that type of real brave, high
leadership,
high
right?
EQ leader. Yeah.
Great one. I'm glad I pushed you because I've studied him as well, and he has one of my favorite quotes, because we all have ups and downs, and sometimes, I would say if you haven't had a time where you're like, holy cow, how am I going to get out of this? Then you're probably not human, right? We've all ridden that roller coaster of life and emotions. And he has a quote that I love, and it says, when you're walking through hell, don't stop. Just keep on going. You'll get out of it, right? You'll get out of it. Yeah.
And he did. He got them out of it, and that, history, he was not appreciated very well at the time. History has looked very kindly on what he did for the whole world, honestly.
Right, yeah.
But he was not popular, and he was lonely, and he had to do what he had to do.
Yeah.
So for all his vices and the smoking and the drinking and the whatever other habits that were awkward, that guy may have saved the world as we know it.
Yep.
So, I don't want to be over dramatic about it, but from what I read, he was the key player in World War II.
Love it. And there's a lot of leaders like that aren't appreciated until after all is said and done and the dust is settled. People are like, wow, Abraham Lincoln, same thing, right? I mean, that's a great one. I'm glad I pushed you, Mike. So excellent.
I'm glad too. Thank you. Because basically people will be more impressed hearing me talk about Winston Churchill than Mike Greenberg.
You added some depth, Yeah, very good. So Mike, before we go, people want to get in touch with you. They want to go to your site, get your books. What's the best way to connect with you?
Thanks. Well, for books, honestly, Amazon, because they're always in stock and the pricing is great. You get it quickly. They just do a bang-up job.
Here it is again for you watching Sales Truth by Mike Weinberg. Look it up.
And my last name is spelled Weinberg, Weinberg. So my website is real easy, mikeweinberg.com.
Excellent.
And on social channels, it's Mike_Weinberg, Twitter, Instagram, a lot of fun. And I'll share some sports stuff and observations from clients, and I'll rant even once in a while when I'm frustrated. So enjoy
Excellent. Mike, I'm so glad we finally got to do this. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed meeting you.
Oh my gosh, totally my honor, David. Thank you for a great conversation.
Excellent. I look forward to keeping in touch, and I'm already signed up for Outbound for next year. Going with my buddy Tony King. So at the very latest, I will see you at the Outbound conference next year in Atlanta.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thanks again, Mike. Congratulations on all your success. I also want to thank the Ivanti family for listening. Thank you so much. This was an extra long podcast, Mike. We went a little bit long, but it was so good. Can't stop it, right? So thank you, Ivanti listeners. Listen, if you want to hear this podcast again and again and again, show notes, over 140 other interviews, AvantiEntrepreneur.com, AvantiEntrepreneur.com. And also go to our site. We have we have coaching programs. You get information on our events. We have live summits with some great speakers. Would love to meet you someday. AvantiEntrepreneur.com. Have a great day, everybody, and stay awesome.